Hello. This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and community in which you now reside.
My name is Charles Boddington Harris Jr. I live in Orleans, Massachusetts.
What was your life like growing up?
It's very unique. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. And at the time I was growing up in the 40s and 50s and 60s, it was a racially charged city. So everybody was very conscious of where you lived, who could go to what places, all of that. The most important thing from my memory is that so many of us were immigrants, or the children of immigrants. And it was very important for us to be Americanized. So people had their names anglicized, people were forbidden to speak their native language at home. So the one thing we were all told is that what you have to do is get an education. And Boston has an excellent reputation then and now as a public school system. So that's what we did. We got the best education we could because everybody told us it's the only thing they cannot take away from you. So it was a very interesting way of growing up because we all played together, blacks, whites, Italians. We're all in the same neighborhood. We were neighbors of each other. It's only when we got to a certain age, 12, 13 years old, that we were told, no, you can't play with her anymore, you can't play with him. They don't go to your church, they don't go to the synagogue. And we had difficulty with that. So we joined all kinds of ecumenical organizations like the National Conference of Christians and Jews, so that we would meet high school students. Would meet regularly to discuss these issues of race. And that's what we did growing up.
Were you religious at all growing up? And if so, how did that affect you during war?
I was religious. I was brought up as a Congregationalist, which is now called a Universalist Protestant. And when it came to the war, Vietnam War in specific, it was difficult to form an opinion because we didn't have that much information, number one. But most importantly, we were told it was your duty and obligation to fight for your country. Because one of the things that you have is the opportunity to exercise your religious expression however you want to. And our friends who went to school with us didn't necessarily go to church with us because they went to another church. When we got to high school, in my case, Boston Latin School, students came from all over the city. When I got into the war zone, which was 50 years ago, as a matter of fact, April of this year, it was after the Tet Offensive, and religion wasn't an issue. I got to be honest with you, people were shooting at me. My only concern was getting out of there in one piece. And on your dog tags, you have to have what's called your religious preference. You can have Catholic, Jewish, or no preference. So I chose no preference.
Where did you attend college?
I went to what is now called a historically black college at Fisk University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. I went there after graduating from Latin school, and I majored in psychology and speech and drama. I was there for 2.5 years. I had to come back to Boston for some family business. I went back, did another year there. And then I returned to Boston and went to Emerson College, where I majored in radio and television broadcasting. And that's when I got my greetings from Uncle Sam.
What was your perspective on war before you joined?
It's the same as it is now. Every war ends. The 100-year war ended. And what did people do? They sat down and they talked to one another. I've seen enough death and destruction to last me a lifetime. I do not understand why then or now, 50 years later, folks don't sit down and talk to each other. With the understanding, of course, they're not going to agree on everything. But old men sending other people's children out to die is not the answer.
Did you have any family or friends that were in the military?
I had my father's godson was a Green Beret, and then he went into Army intelligence. And I saw him maybe 3 times. I had other friends, one other friend, and his older brother was a Green Beret. But I didn't have no members of my family that I know of were ever in the military.
Do you feel that you were pressured into joining?
I got drafted. United States government says, "Come on, son," and like I said, we all grew up knowing it's a duty to fight for our country, and not everybody gets to do it. That's why they draft so many people. And I enlisted in the Army to become a radio and television broadcaster, and I ended up in Vietnam.
How did your peers react to you going to war?
Like it was no big deal because it wasn't them.
If you had any, what concerns did you have about going to war?
Getting killed. And we did an interview years ago with a bunch of Vietnam veterans. And at the end of the 30-minute interview, we were asked to look at the interview tape, which we did. And one of the last questions that was asked was, what was it like in Vietnam? And a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps who had just retired after 20 years said, nobody's mentioned this yet, but I'd like to say I was scared because people were killing us. And you need to understand that all the politics, all the rhetoric will not stop a bullet from hitting you. And prayer is good, hope is good, having faith in your fellow man is even better. So it was a difficult time. And that was the only interview I've ever conducted, and I've had about 4 or 5 of them, that any veteran said he was scared. And when he said he was scared, everybody in the room on each of these 5 occasions just nodded their head, yes. But no one ever talks about it. At least no one I know.
What was boot camp like for you?
Very informative. I did boot camp at Fort Bragg, North Carolina in July and August of 1967. It was hotter than Hades. Sometimes it was so hot and humid that we couldn't train outside. And of course, barracks don't have air conditioning. We had 2 drill sergeants for our platoon. One of them was a short, white Southerner, and the other one was a tall, black Northerner. Now the Southerner, he was our chief, like I said, drill instructor. He didn't like people who had more than a 6th grade education because that's all that he had. He didn't think anybody ever needed it. He didn't like anybody who was black because he didn't like anybody who was black. He didn't like anybody with a college education because he said they were smart so-and-sos. And we just didn't like him. So we all got together as a platoon, so about 30 people, and said, this is not working. And at that time, we were the highest rated platoon. So next time we had an inspection, we dropped down a rank. The next week, we dropped down another rank. Well, that's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to get up, go up. You're supposed to improve. And so, to make a long story mercifully short, we told the first sergeant, this is not working. The first sergeant said, well, you need to have to go talk to the captain, which I did. And the captain said I was a troublemaker and a communist, and I just needed to toe the line. That was just plain the last straw. He said, never mind. And within 3 weeks, he was on his way to Vietnam. What we did was, as a group, decided that we needed to function as a group. And that's why I say it was so informative. Those 8 weeks, guys who never knew each other. I had a Ku Klux Klansman in my platoon. I had what we now call gangbangers from the north in my platoon. Guys from all over the country, because we were part of McNamara's 500,000. So Secretary of Defense McNamara said we need 300,000 people. So they drafted 500,000. And in that drafting, they had people who were 23, 24 years old rather than 6, 17, 18. And we all came in there together. A lot of college graduates, some people with master's degrees, one thing we said when we left. That was the most gratifying and the most informative thing we found out. That we could get together with a bunch of people that we don't know, don't have anything in common with, find out we do have something in common, be well trained, and go out and do our job, which is exactly what we did.
Did you get along with the people around you during boot camp?
Oh yeah. There was a guy from somewhere in the Midwest. He had a little farm. He had some cattle, and his wife was pregnant, and he was in the reserve. So he had to stay there for the 8 weeks. He couldn't go back and help her do the kind of work that needed to happen on his ranch. So we said, well, that's not a problem. We all get together, give you some money, and you can hire a ranch hand. And he said, you do that? I said, yeah, we're all going to do it. That's what I'm saying. We're all in this together. It's not going to help us if you're sitting there worried about what's happening with your pregnant wife. So we said, well, I'll think about it. And the people in his hometown came to their rescue. So we never had to do that. Everybody was impressed by the fact, including the first sergeant, that we had all come together as a group to do that. I was kind of impressed too, actually.
What was it like in Vietnam?
Uncertainty. You know that every day you could get killed. I was in the light infantry, and I was a company clerk for a light infantry company. And that light infantry company was Delta Company, 6th Battalion, 31st Infantry, and we were assigned to the 9th Infantry Division. The 9th Infantry Division provided soldiers for MACV. MACV is the Military Assistance Command Vietnam. They're the supervisors of all military actions that occur in Vietnam. And our company, our battalion, was supposed to have been assigned to a brigade. It never was. It was attached to a brigade. So our battalion was known as 1,000 people as the bastard battalion of Vietnam. Whenever MACV needed a particular person for a particular job, whatever that person's regular job was, they went and do that job. So we have clerks who had Bronze Stars for service. We have mechanics who have Bronze Stars for service. And we have cooks who have Bronze Stars for service. And the reason it's for service rather than valor, even though it was in combat, is because their MOS, their military occupational specialty, was not combat specific. So that's why they got the star for service rather than for valor. But what they did was in combat.
Was war like you expected it to be?
No. And it was just never fun. The pressure, part of my job was to identify the dead and wounded and then write a letter to the next of kin. So I'm writing a letter to a woman I don't know from a hole in the wall. I've never met this poor woman, and the only communication I'm going to have with her is the fact that I've typed this letter for my company commander to sign, telling her the death of her son. And that's just debilitating. And I came back from R&R on January 13th, 1969, and it was January 12th was the worst casualty list we'd ever had. I typed so many letters, I actually cried. I had to stop. These letters have to be perfect. No imperfections, no typos, no correction fluid. And I just had to stop. I did 12. And those people were dead. Not dead, not all of them were dead, sorry. Dead and wounded. And then we typed up the documents for those people to get the awards and ribbons that they're supposed to get. It was so bad that my first sergeant, who had been in Korea as well as Vietnam, said he just never seen anything like it. What he's talking about is you go to the Tan Son Nhut mortuary and there are stacks of bodies. And the Tan Son Nhut mortuary is in an airplane hangar. So you can take a cargo plane into the hangar and load the body bags or coffins, depending upon the circumstances, onto the plane. And it was something to see. And I told one of the mortuary attendants, graves registration men, I said, what are you doing? He said, we're going to have lunch. I said, I beg your pardon? He said, we're going to have lunch. It's 11:30. Don't you guys have lunch where you are? And I said, he said, hey, you do your job, this is our job. This is what we do. And I said, well, God bless you, son, because I'm out of here.
What was the scariest moment for you personally?
We're in a place called Tan An, a little village in southern South Vietnam. And we're attached to the 3rd Brigade. And we're sleeping, and we hear small arms fire. And I look up out of my cot, and there's a tracer line going by. That's a red line, meaning every either 4 or 5 bullets has a red tip to it. So when it's being fired, you can see it. And that's our guys firing at the enemy. The enemy, of course, is firing at us. And I couldn't get up. I was literally pinned down. And I had my rifle, and I said, well, I'm not going to be taken prisoner. That's just not going to happen. And just as I was determining that, was I going to shoot myself, or was I going to wait for them to come in and we'll all die in glory? It all stopped. That was the scariest moment.
Did you make any bonds with people during the war? And if so, do you feel that that benefited you in any way?
I made bonds with the understanding that we're not going to be lifelong friends. We're not going back to the same neighborhood. So the bonds I made, I still have with some of those people. And to answer your question, clearly it's a benefit. These are all good folk. Now, we don't always agree on everything, but then we didn't before. We're talking over a 50-year period of time. So, yeah, I'm in touch with I've been in touch with two of my company commanders over the period of time. And there's nothing much to talk about. You know, we all understand the circumstance we were in because we were all right there. And between the medics, the cooks, the mechanics, the truck drivers, we're all one unit, all one company. And we traveled to Vietnam together, which at that time had never happened before. It doesn't happen much since then. And so we had a bond because we had all been training in a place called Fort Lewis, Washington for 4 months. We trained in Fort Lewis, Washington between the months of November of 1967 and April of 1968. Well, it's cold up there. The ground freezes. And we're being sent to Vietnam. Go figure.
Did you often think about your friends and family while you were away?
Oh, yeah. I wonder what they were doing. I didn't do it often because it just wasn't the opportunity. I mean, it just wasn't. So around like this holidays, you do a tour in Vietnam. If you're in the Army, you do it for 12 months. If you're in the Marine Corps, you do it for 13 months. So 12 calendar months. So you get to all the holidays, you get plus your birthday, hopefully, you get to spend there. And you just wonder what they're doing. You know how they're doing because some of them are sending tape recorded messages. Some of them are writing every other day, which is not in my case. So my friends, 2 friends, wrote to me while I was in Vietnam, maybe 3. The tenor of the mood in the United States of America at that time had started to change. And people were becoming very vocal about being against the war in Vietnam. And that's what they were. So it was, you wait for your, not, I'm going to say you wait for your birthday, but you couldn't do that. What would happen is, every once in a while I would get a care package from home. And then it would be a packet of Kool-Aid. And the Kool-Aid was pre-sweetened, you put it in your canteen. Well, dear old Mama did precisely that, sent me some brownies, which I still remember to this very day because they came moist. I don't know how they did that, but they did. God bless America. And put the Kool-Aid in my canteen, went out, came back, drank it, and started to gag because my mother had made a mistake. It wasn't pre-sweetened, and I didn't look at the label, so I just poured it in. Here's a lesson to you. Do not ever eat Kool-Aid that is not sweetened. It will make you gag. And not only that, then you feel embarrassed. Well, I should have, I put it in. I'm drinking this. This is going into my body, and I don't know what it is. I don't drink unless I know what I'm doing.
What is your worst memory of being in Vietnam?
That memory coming home from, returning from Bangkok, which is where I had my R&R in January of 1969, and being told when we got off, we did this way. We flew from Bangkok to Long Binh, and then we took a single engine plane to Boddington, we were based. Our Jeep driver came out and said what had happened, that we had been ambushed, and they still didn't know how many casualties that they had. So one of the casualties was a guy who had just joined our company, and he had been told he was a sergeant, staff sergeant E6. He was asked if he wanted to stay in the Army because he was about to be discharged, and he said yes, he did. So he was advised, and correctly so, that he needed to be in a line company. He had been in a weapons company. So he came into our company, and that night he got shot and died. And he was a gentleman, and he was a Panamanian. And my first sergeant in basic training was a Panamanian. And so I knew the history of Panamanians fighting in the United States Army, and the great sacrifices that they made. And this guy made the supreme sacrifice. People being people, he had just bought an expensive stereo system, and it was all packed up to ship home, and someone had taken it. So we put the word out, you need to return that. And it was returned. It's a difficult war is a difficult circumstance, and people who go into it know as little about it as everybody else. You don't know what it's like until you're in it. And when you're in it, you wish you weren't.
Were you ever injured during the war?
Yes. I have a hole in my head, and it was caused by an explosion. And this is not in my military records, but it's in my VA records, because I'm a disabled veteran. I have a VA file. And I also have suppressed memory because of this. And I talked to a nurse. I said, I don't have any memory of this incident. I was told what happened, but clearly I have a hole in my head, and my jaw was wired without anesthesia, because my dentist did a topogram and x-rays and found that out. So in this one instance, that's what happened. I do not have a Purple Heart, because I said it's not in my records. As of 2 years ago, the CIA says my records are still classified. And there's no indication that's going to change. So yeah, I got wounded, and it had caused me to have a condition that used to be called partial selective amnesia. It's now called psychogenic amnesia, and it's caused by brain trauma. That's what I got.
How do you think war affected you when you got home?
I was told by my mother that my father had to have surgery, which he had, and that he was fine. And there was no reason to bring me home early. I came home, and the man could barely stand up. I said that my job was identifying the dead and the wounded. I saw that man, I looked at him, and I said, this man will not live a month. That was April the 3rd, 1969. He died May the 10th, 1969. He had been terminal since August. And my mother elected not to tell me. And I asked my mother, I asked my brother why. And they said they wanted me to die for the money. And I said, I beg your pardon? And he repeated himself. Because he knew that my father was my next of kin. So if my father died and I died, they would get the money. And that's what they wanted. So that's what they did.
How do you think your family and friends were affected by you going to war?
Obviously not very much. As I said, I didn't have much communication with my friends and family while I was in Vietnam. And when I came home, they acted like I'd just been out for a walk. And nobody asked me the questions you're asking me. That's the reality of it. And I was still in the Army. I had 13 months left on my enlistment. So I was stationed at a place called Fort Devens, Massachusetts. But I had to get what they call a compassionate reassignment so I could stay at home to watch my father die, which is what I did. And after he died, I got a permanent assignment at Fort Devens, and that's where I stayed.
How do you feel that war benefited you in the long run?
It impressed upon me the importance of listening before you open your mouth. It is imperative that we all communicate better with each other. As I said before about wars, people don't want to talk, up to shooting each other up, and then they want to talk. And I believe talking is a very good thing, but you have to listen. And I find it very upsetting personally, and I did professionally as well, that folks would say what they thought you wanted to hear. And you wanted to hear it, so you heard it. And that's not a good thing. You have to pay attention. You just have to pay attention.